I'm Anastasia Krumwiede. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I used to teach third grade at Emmanuel for, I think, 9 years. And then I've just recently moved to Houston, and I work at Memorial now, and I teach the upper grades. I teach 6th through 10th grade now, and I'm helping them start their high school. So that's really exciting. Let's see, what was it? Oh, okay. So my session is going to help you with the practical side of things. So I know philosophically that we all agree, right, that certain things are good and true and beautiful. But how do we do that? How do we actually train young minds? How do we actually, he was talking about the souls of our students. How do we actually do that? What are the actual practical things that we how do we do that? So I'm going to start out with a little bit of philosophy, maybe 10 minutes of philosophy, and then I'm going to actually give you some, examples of what you can actually do in your classroom. And hopefully, I'm praying that we have time at the end for you guys to actually tell me what you guys do. So these are some of the things that probably a lot of you already do in your classrooms. And I'm not going to give you examples of every single thing you can possibly do in your classroom. So I was hoping at the end that maybe you guys could talk amongst yourselves, or we could kind of have more of like an open discussion of, hey, I do this. Have you ever tried doing this? Or something like that, just to help one another. One of the great reasons for why we meet together like this, right, is so that we can bounce ideas off of one another, right, and get some ideas. So I'm hoping we have time for that at the end. Okay. Mindset, right? Where's your mind at? Every minute that we have with our young people is important. They learn from every single thing that they experience and hear. How do we maximize this and make school meaningful and impactful for young people? So this is not just about curricula. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about what's the best history curriculum. I'm not going to talk about that. This is something that is outside the scope of curricula and about the student's life and about what it means to be a student, or what it means to be a Christian, or a Lutheran Christian. Okay? So first of all, what is liturgy? If you look up the word liturgy, it's from the Greek word that means public service or the worship of the gods, but it literally means the work for the people. It's what the people do. Lutherans think of liturgy, and this is why this is perfect from the plenary. He was talking about our rich Lutheran liturgy. Okay, Lutherans think of liturgy when it comes to church and the order of service. So that might be the way when you hear the word liturgy, you might be thinking about that. And actually, it's a perfect tie-in to what we do in the classroom, and I'll explain that in a little bit. There's a reason for why we have a liturgy, and I'm sure all of you understand this, but there's a reason for why we have a liturgy in the Lutheran order of service. Okay, it orders our minds. Right? When we have an order, when there's an order to the service, it orders our minds, and it orders, and then in that, it also orders our souls, right? Because it orders our minds. So the liturgy actually instructs us. It's actually formative. Just to give you a personal example, my husband was reading my notes and he was like, "Oh, you mentioned me." Just to give you a personal example, my husband did not grow up Lutheran, and so when he met me, he just knew he had to become Lutheran to marry me. So when he started going to services, one of the things that really stood out to him when he started going to the services was the words of institution. Because it's chanted, because it's sung, because it's elevated, right? It's an elevated part of the service, and we do the same thing every Sunday, right? Well, there's a reason why it's the same thing. It's because God's word, right, lives forever. His word stands forever, and so we want to elevate God's word, and that's the sacrament, right? We're showing how important a sacrament is, okay? And that's just in the church setting. And so now I'm trying to get us to think about in the classroom setting. God created order in nature, so we should also order our lives around the good, true, and the beautiful. So I'm gonna try to switch to the school setting. Liturgies can also be secular and things that we do every day. So what do you do every day when you get up in the morning? Okay, do you kiss your baby? Do you brush your teeth? Right? I mean, there are things that you do every morning when you wake up, and those are actually informative too. So just to give you an example, and this is an example that's actually from a book. If you're interested in reading a book about ordering a student's hearts or the culture, it has to do with the culture and ordering our hearts and our minds and our souls and things like that. There's a book by Kagan called Desiring the Kingdom. It's called Desiring the Kingdom. That's where I'm getting a lot of the ideas about, liturgies and things like that, because we use liturgies every day and we experience liturgies, whether we know it or not. We experience liturgies. Now, as an aside, Kagan is not a Lutheran. He doesn't come from the Lutheran perspective. I think he's Reformed or something like that. But his ideas of liturgies and the culture and how we affect and how the cultural liturgies affect us is very important. So that's kind of where I'm getting some of these ideas. Okay, so one of his examples is the liturgy of a baseball game. So raise your hand if you've ever been to a baseball game, an MLB game or whatever. Okay, mostly everybody has been to an MLB game, okay? There's an order, correct? Right? So you get there, you get your burger or whatever, you sit down, okay, the batters are warming up, whatever, What's the first thing that happens? Anyone? National anthem. Okay, all right, we're in America, right? Not in America, we're in the United States, right? We're in the United States, right? And then you have what? The first pitch, right? Okay, why would we sing the national anthem in the 7th inning? Am I right? We want to start off with the national anthem, right? And so there's an order to write certain things like that. The other thing I thought about some other examples too to get you to think about this is, what do you do for your birthday? Like, is there a liturgy that you like, right? You always have cake, right? Or maybe there's like your favorite cake that you always have, right? There's always there's a process, there's like an order, there's something that you always do for your birthday. Okay, I'm going to move on. I was going to mention the fact, well, no, I'm going to move on. Okay, there's more. There's a lot, but I'm not going to mention all that. Okay, so how do we use classroom liturgies to order the minds of our students and to inculcate them with Christian Lutheran culture? A different culture than what the world expects, right? We were listening in the plenary, completely the opposite of what the world is thinking a classroom should be handled or should be. How do we get them to desire Christian culture over the world's culture? So how do we convince them? Now, I teach older students, so, it's better to convince them that something is correct than to tell them, oh, this is correct, right? It's better to, with the younger kids, you can say, no, you're going to do this, and I'm not going to explain to you why, right? But to older students, right, you want to convince them that something is right, okay? Okay, so now we're going to get into the practical aspects. Be intentional with what you expose the children to throughout the day. Be intentional. So like I said, every minute, and especially for the younger kids, but I'm also going to get into how you can do it with the older, even high school age students. Every single minute counts in the classroom. And I'm not talking about putting facts into their brains, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples here. Make school more than just time for learning. Make it an experience. It's a. I don't want to get too into the nitty-gritties, but make it more than just I'm going to school to learn facts. Okay. Well, you're also a part of a community, right? You're also a part of a community, and we need to learn how that works. This is also very important. How we go about the school day can negatively or positively affect the curricula. So if you think, oh, I've got it made, I got the curriculum, I got my scope and sequence, woohoo, okay? Well, guess what? The way you run your classroom can negatively or positively affect how those students take what they learn and how they use it, right? Because we eventually want them to use what they're learning, Okay, not just to stick it in their brain and then forget it in 2 years or something, right? We actually want them to live out their lives according to what they've learned. Okay. Obviously, the purpose, this is kind of broad, but the purpose of Lutheran classical education is just to simply to make lifelong Christians and lifelong learners, right? That's the goal. To help make people who love Jesus and to love learning. So both people who love the Lord and to love to learn. And so this is what Kagan's book is about our habits are ordered by what we love. So how do we order the loves, okay, of our students? How do we get them to love reading? How do we get them to love A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? There's all these things that we want our students to love. Or if they already love that thing, how do we make it even more beautiful for them? Like let's say a student of yours already likes reading. Well, what are they reading? Right? Are they reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Right? I hear some laughs, so it's not the best book, right? Or are they reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Right? So there is a way in which you can order someone's loves. This is for new teachers. This is just something I thought of for new teachers. I know when I first started out, make plans, especially if you're a first-year teacher. So if you're a first-year or maybe even second-year teacher, you actually have to write down what your liturgies are. Like, what do we do before lunch? And I'm going to get into that, right? What do we do before we have snack time? What do we do before we pack up? What do we do? I mean, these are things that are not in the curricula. These are things that are not like written down that you're supposed to do, but you have to figure out, right, what you're going to do. So I highly recommend, especially for the first couple days of school, to literally write out. The students will come in the classroom. I will stand in the front. They will be, literally write out exactly what is going to be happening. Are the students going to be standing in front of their desk? Okay. Are the students going to be sitting? Are the students going to be looking at the board you have over here? So being very specific and intentional about, how are the students going to pray? Are you going to pray? Are you going to have someone, pray for the class? That kind of thing. Okay. Appeal to the senses. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go in a little bit of a different order here. Sorry. Actually, no, sorry. We'll do this. There's a lot to talk about. So, appeal to the senses. Have you noticed how when you go into church and, they extinguish the candles and you smell the smell of like the extinguished candles? For children, and think about like a kindergartner or a first grader, that's an experience. They're smelling that smell, and that's going to remind them of worship or service, right? So anything that you can do in your classroom that creates, that appeals to the senses, their sense of smell, visually, is everything that they're viewing beautiful in your classroom, right? Things like that. I'll just tell you a quick story. So at Emmanuel, there was a young lady in my classroom years ago, and we usually would say prayer at the beginning of the day outside, but when it's raining, of course, you have to come inside, okay? So we would do prayers in my classroom, and I would have, an order. I would use the, it's from the Lutheran service book, but it's just a really quick like prayer where we say our prayers together. But when it was raining outside, I would turn out the lights and light a candle. And I would explain to the students that we're like the early Christians who had to hide in their houses and in the dark, right, and light a candle. And then, so I'm giving them that experience of you're like the early Christians, right? So it turns out that this mother came to me one day at church and she goes, you know what? My daughter, every time there's a rainstorm or it's raining, she turns out the lights and lights a candle and says a prayer. So seriously, that's a true story. So you don't, and to me that was like, whoa. So I really actually affected that child's understanding of what you do when it rains. So she thought when it rains outside, you light a candle and you say a prayer. Okay. So these very intentional things that you're doing during your school day actually do affect how students think and what they know. Okay. Getting into a little bit more of the nitty gritty. Nonverbal. So it's good to have really nonverbal liturgies. For instance, a nonverbal liturgy in church, right? Signing the cross, right? It's something that you do, right? You don't say anything, but you physically, right? Or maybe you say something, right? But, this is sort of like a physical liturgy. How do you do that in the classroom? You can use sign language. You can use hand signs. Maybe some of you maybe already do that in your classroom. So in my classroom, when the kids did this, that means that I have a question, because I think this is letter I. Correct, Steve? Yeah, it's letter I. So I have a question. Okay, this would be I have a question. This would be, I think, I have a comment. Okay, this was I have a comment, because this is C, sorry. So I have a comment, right? So things like that, nonverbal signs. Whenever I would use my arms and they understood what this meant, whenever I would go like this, it meant everyone could say the answer. So if I went, guys, what is 2 times 2? They would know that this meant everyone could answer in the classroom. Everyone could yell out the answer, okay? So using nonverbal liturgies, right, in your classroom is really, really important. Just pointing to things. So are you sick of every single day before literature class, you say, all right, kids, get out your literature book, turn to page blah, blah, blah. Simply hold up the book and point to it, okay? Simply walk into the classroom and go, right? They know, you guys know, if you teach younger kids, you guys know that they know the order of, you don't need to constantly be telling what the order is. Now it's time for literature, right? Just point to it. If the students already know what to do, don't keep repeating instructions. So for instance, the pastor doesn't say, all right, everybody, stand up, right? Because people know the order of the service, okay? So for instance, if your students know, okay, if your students know that they're supposed to do A, B, or C at that certain point, don't say the instructions if they're already doing it. If they're already doing what they're supposed to be doing, just be quiet. So another thing that I encourage you is don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of quiet. So if it's just quiet in your classroom and they're quietly doing what they're supposed to be doing, don't go, okay, guys, it's time to do this, when they're already doing that specific thing that they already know to do. Creating good habits. Okay, so a synonym for liturgies of learning would also be creating good habits. Okay, here's how you can do that. Want your students to love reading? Read to them daily for fun. Allow time in the day for silent reading. So let's say silent reading isn't even in your curricula. I don't care, put it in there, okay? Stick it in your day. So, let's say 5 or 10 minutes after recess, they have silent reading time. Great, awesome. Okay, do that because you want them to enjoy reading. Want students to love stories? Have story time. Okay, just do a fun story time at the end of the day if you have some time, okay? My favorite story that I would do for my 3rd graders would be the 3 things story. Does anyone know what this is, 3 things story? So I pick 3 students and they each say one thing. So like, fairy, dragon, haunted house, and then I make up a story that has those 3 things in it, and it's just, they love it. They just absolutely love it. Want them to love worship? Talk about it or practice it in class. So talk about, hey, that was a great sermon the pastor did today, okay? Pray and worship in class too. Pray with students after a fight or a disciplinary situation. So if you're in a disciplinary situation with a student and you forgive them, pray with that student. Make them understand that prayer is a part of life and not just what we do in church. Want students to eliminate technology? I know I do. Don't let students see you using technology. Truly model what it means to ignore your screen. Truly do. Okay? Now, obviously, if it's an emergency, you really need to look up an email or something, that's fine. But don't let students see you looking at your phone. Okay? Don't let students, if a student is talking to you, don't go, hold on one second, let me check my email. Okay? Pay attention to them. Pay attention to what they're doing and show them, model to them that you don't really like technology either, right? Of course, unless you're using technology like for a lesson, that's a totally different thing, right? But pay attention to the students. Deviate from routine to emphasize certain things. So, deviate from routine, right? Sometimes we need to deviate from routine. Do special prayers for specific things. Let's say a student is sick. Stop, take 5 minutes and pray for that student, okay? Let's say there was a natural disaster in your city. Pray for the people that suffered in the natural disaster. Let's say there's a feast day. Let's say you're celebrating the, day of St. Michael or whatever, something like that, right? Say a special prayer for that during class, like at the beginning of the day. Sorry, lost my spot. Sing hymns all the time. So make sure that the students understand that singing hymns isn't just in chapel, right? I'm sure a lot of you do that. I'm sure a lot of you sing hymns throughout the day. Let's say you're transitioning to the bathroom and the kids take forever to use the bathroom. Sing a hymn, okay? And that makes it really fun. Or sing a song that you're learning in class. End of the day. This one's a good one. Do you find yourself frantically getting students to pack up and make a mad dash for dismissal? Anyone? Yes. Okay. Make the end of the day calm, okay? So instead, at the end of the day, end the day with a short hymn to close the day with something calm. So end the day, you have to plan this, right? If it takes 15 minutes for your students to pack up, you got to take an extra 2 minutes for them to sing the song so you can make it to dismissal, right, on time. So you got to plan for this, right? Actually put this into your plans and actually do this, okay? So end the day with something, turn out the lights, end the day with something completely calm and relaxing. And it makes, it makes you feel really calm too. Let's say the day was super crazy. The kids were really crazy because they will be crazy, okay? It will end the day for you as being very calm as well. Take special trips. Take your students to the church. Take them on a field trip. Go to the church. This could be any grade level. Hey, boys and girls, why is there green on the altar? Okay, and they can tell you why there's green on. Explain to them that church isn't just for when we have church, right? Take them into the church. Show them the symbols of the church year, right? Explain that to them. That's really good for the younger ones mostly. Do a music field trip, right? Take your young ones to go see obviously ask your music director, but go and see the organ, right? Have your kids play a note on the organ. Have the little kids play a note on the organ. Get them to realize that this is an instrument. This is not off limits, right? This is an instrument that you could learn how to play, okay? Older grades. I was mostly kind of talking about younger grades. Now, those of you I kind of miss having third grade sometimes because you have the flexibility in your schedule to kind of do whatever you want, so within reason, right? With the older grades, though, it's much more difficult because oftentimes you don't have time with your homeroom, or you don't have time with your, you don't have a lot of time with just one class. You have separate classes. So here are some of the things that I did, or just some ideas of things. So every class, I began with a greeting. So I allowed students to come in chit-chatting, carrying away, joking. I would joke with them, whatever, they come in. And they knew, though, it was great. It actually worked really well. They knew that once I greeted them in Latin, when I said, Salvete discipulos, they knew to answer me, Salve, Mrs. Krumwiede. And then they knew that was the beginning of class. So make sure that it's very clear. Make sure your expectations are clear for your students, that they know, okay, when she says this, it's time for class, but she lets us chit-chat and stuff like that all the way up to that point, right? And so they feel like they're getting sort of this freedom to kind of goof off and stuff before class starts, but they know exactly when the class starts, okay? This also creates a liturgy of we greet our teacher, right? We say hello to our teacher. We say hello to and this will be very good for when they get into college or into high school, right? We say hello to our teacher. Ask students to stand when adults or visitors enter. So just to acknowledge that there's someone coming into your classroom and that we acknowledge that there's someone here. It doesn't always work because if you're literally in the middle of something, it can be kind of hard to do. But sometimes that helps with understanding that to be respectful. It teaches respect. Start class in the older grades with a recitation or a game to appeal to their competitive nature. So if you literally start every single class with a trick question or let's say you start the class, every single class, you literally start with some sort of trick question where they can get points or something. If you give them, that they're gonna want to, they understand that that's what happens every day, and they're going to be interested in that, and they're going to want to wait. They're going to want to be excited, right, to go to class. And that gets them excited to learn, right? If they didn't know something, they might want to actually know it. They might want, if they realize, oh, I didn't know that, they might actually want to know it. They might want to actually figure it out and become lifelong learners. That might help. Okay, that's it. There's obviously many other liturgies that you can do in your classrooms, and I didn't write all of them down. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, great. Okay, so we have tons of time actually to open it up to if you have questions, that's fine. Or if you want to say what you do, if there's something really special that's worked in your class, whether it be like praying or singing, or whether it be a game that you play or something like that to start out classes, or how do you start your classes or anything like that. I'll just open it up. Yes?
So last year with COVID, we didn't have any student jobs in the room, but usually we do, and I'm kind of rethinking that. Do you have thoughts on jobs that you assign to students?
Yeah, so when I taught third grade, I would have jobs for them to do. That's very good because that teaches them that they're a part of this community of students and that they should serve their neighbors in those sorts of ways. So definitely acknowledging that there's certain jobs that need to be done in the classroom, and definitely acknowledging if they do that on their own, like if they're responsible enough to just do that job, definitely acknowledging them of that, because that means they're actually learning responsibility, and they're learning responsibility from that. So yeah, that's actually, I don't know if that's actually what I would call a liturgy, but that's definitely something that's going to help the student to become well-rounded. And
sometimes I was thinking some of the liturgies or the procedures or the things we do in the classroom, the students help me do those because I don't have time to always go and put those things in place. Right. I was just thinking, did you have any student helpers or any specific kinds of jobs like that you...
Yeah, because it's funny how sometimes the most practical things that you need, for instance, you don't have enough time to do A, B, C, D, or E. The kids actually learn from that. When you give them that job and you tell them hey, I want you to help me do this, they're actually learning from that. And I think that is... Yes, I think that's great. And sometimes, and with the little kids, you guys know if you teach really little kids, sometimes it takes a lot of patience to let a kindergartner, for instance, let's say if you let a kindergartner pass out coloring pages, right? It's going to take them a lot longer, and they're probably not going to be very good at it. But guess what? You had the patience to take 5 extra minutes out of your, whatever it is, out of your lesson to let them mess up, right? Learn from messing up and doing it, and to actually do it. But it takes a lot of patience to do that. But little things like that, they're never going to forget when their kindergarten teacher asks them to help them. I mean, those are the things that you remember from your childhood, right? That your teacher specifically told you, thank you so much for helping me with A, B, C, D, or E. Now, you don't realize that you did a horrible job, right? You don't think back and go, oh, when I was a kindergarten, I did a horrible job passing out those pens, right? But it made you who you are. It actually helped you become a better person, right? Eventually, later on, right? So, and that's what we're going towards. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Well, we do have the classes stand to greet the adults that come in. Good morning, Mr. Leininger. This next year, we're going to work on the difference between morning and afternoon.
But again, you're having the patience to allow them to mess up and say good morning, but at least they stood up and they acknowledged that adults, right? And so that's what we should be acknowledging, that they actually had the respect and remembered on their own, maybe. I don't know if they did it on their own, but if they do it on their own, right, we're trying to get, even the older students, we're trying to get them to eventually do those things that we've taught them on their own. They're learning respect. Like maybe we taught them to do a certain thing and we have to remind them 10 times. But that 11th time that they do it on their own, that should be acknowledged. That should be commended, that they're doing things on their own. Yeah. Yes.
To piggyback on that, in kindergarten, I'll usually just say it, I'll model it first. So when Pastor Paul walks in, I'll say, class, let's tell Pastor Paul good afternoon. And then they say, good afternoon, Pastor Paul. So they know the flow of it, but I'll sometimes just say it to help them remember.
Yes, absolutely. And modeling, right? You used a perfect word right there, right? Modeling. We model the proper behavior for our students, or proper whatever it might be. And especially that's more prevalent, right, in the younger grades, because they just want to be you, right? You don't realize that as the teacher, the students look up to you even more so, maybe even than their parents. I'm sorry to say it, but because it's not that you're better than the parents or something like that. It's that you have authority, right? You have this different kind of authority that students look up to you in a different sort of way than they look to their parents. And so as long as you understand that and realize that everything that you do, they're analyzing and they're modeling. And again, I'd say it's only for the younger kids. Even for the older grades, right? If the older grades see me looking at my phone every 5 minutes during a lesson or whatever, that would be horrible. But let's say I was doing that, that would be bad. Let's say I was doing that, they're going to think, oh, they care more about, Instagram or the email that my mom, guys, even parent emails, I'm telling you, the parent emails can wait. Okay? Children are not going to wait. The children, and I'm not saying don't answer parent emails. I'm not saying that, but it might be a good practice, at least I've done this, to wait till school's over to check emails completely. Because sometimes you can read that parent email in the middle of the day and go, oh gosh, and then you don't feel like teaching, right? Because you're just like, oh, I got that parent email that I got to deal with, okay? So I highly recommend that you think differently. Like you are doing something different than the rest of the world, right? You are not constantly checking your email like most people that have regular jobs. They're probably, kind of constantly checking their email. That's what you're not about. You're about that child. You're about your class. And that's what you need to live for, right? That at that moment, right? You don't live for only that, but that's what you live for at that moment, okay? Yes?
Just piggybacking on that, I'm a homeschooling parent, but even I have to communicate. Like when I'm doing school with my kids, I won't get your text message, or I won't get your email. Yeah. And if it's important, call. And even in the classrooms, like you know how to call the school office.
Yes.
If mom needs a message about how someone's getting home today, or whatever, call, because then you'll know it's received.
Right.
Even my husband knows if he texts me in the middle of the day, he doesn't know I got it unless I respond. Like, there's no guarantee.
Right.
Like, if it's important, and my kids also know, mom will pick up the phone if it rings, unless then it's like, this is probably a junk call.
Right.
But not the buzzes.
Right. Exactly. Great. That's a great practice. That's an excellent practice. Yes?
I began teaching 5th grade for the first time ever in classical school. And I was curious, do you give the kids at that age the liturgy that you print out kind of in a condensed format, like every single thing, but so that they have it in front of them, or do you just...
Nope, I teach it to them. Modeling, kind of like what Kim was saying, modeling it for them. Okay, kids, like literally saying, repeat after me. Da-da-da, this is what we say when we enter the classroom. Hello, Mrs. So-and-so. Hello. And especially at the 5th grade level, because they're like, logic-y, grammar-y. They're sort of in that like kind of middle of the road. They're going to want to do those kinds of things. They're going to want to listen to you and repeat what you say and things like that. So just modeling it for them, make it a game, right? Like I remember when I used to teach the 3rd graders those motions, the motions I was telling you about, like, I have a question, we'd make it a game. So on the first day of school, I'd say, ask me a question. So I'd teach them what the things were, right? And I'd say, ask me a question. And they go, like this, right? You have a comment, right? So making it kind of a game for them where this is just what we do in the classroom, and let's practice this. This is something that we practice. This is something that we're going to learn, that we're going to do all together. And that makes it fun for them if you make it like a game. Okay, kids, what do we say when I say hello? Or whatever, whatever it might be. Keep them on their toes. Does that make sense? You're constantly keeping them on your toes, so they have to constantly remember what the liturgies are. And eventually, like once you establish that at the beginning of the year, the end of the year is going to be easy peasy, because they're going to know exactly what, okay, when Mrs. Krumwiede holds up her book and points to it, that means I get out my literature book and I get ready for class. Like, you know, so there are certain things that they just they just understand, and it becomes a part of the classroom. So, yes.
This was a great session. I just wanted to know some of the benefits that I think come out of working on creating your classroom liturgies, which is of course such an investment of time and intentionality. It takes work to practice for teachers and for students. But out of that order, I think, comes a lot of delight for both teachers and students. It's something that becomes joyful and mastery. Eventually, it doesn't require thought or stress in the same way classroom life might involve. And it also sort of unconsciously maybe communicates belonging. I have a place here, I have a part in the traditions of the class, and I have to engage in this work too. So it just involves the students in such a way that they know they are an important part of the work of the classroom, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to piggyback off of a little bit what the plenary guy, he was talking about memory and how memory is vital. And I was thinking about when I learned basketball, and my basketball coach would tell me, all right, when you shoot a hoop, when you shoot a free throw, it's muscle memory. And I was thinking about how liturgies, because they can be physical things, right? Like see, eye, things like that. It becomes muscle memory to that child. Like, do you think my third graders had to think about doing this when they had a comment by the end of the year? They didn't have to think about it. They just instinctively went like this, and that was their comment, right? So anything to create that calm, and it creates a calm atmosphere when they just know exactly what to do at exactly the right time. And you know what? Are kids going to deviate from that? Yeah, they're going to deviate. They're going to misbehave. But at least you have a standard and you have this practice. You know, I was also thinking about the deeper implications to, you know, for instance, praying in class or worshiping in class or, you know, things like that. And I was thinking about how many of our students will graduate and they will not go to church anymore, right? Many students will, sorry, it's just the nature of, it's sad, it's very sad, right? But many of our students will graduate and they will fall away from the faith. Okay, let's say our student, he goes to college, doesn't go to church, blah, blah, blah. Let's say he gets married and he has kids. What was my childhood like? They start to think, right? When you have your own children, and I haven't been blessed with children yet, but I can imagine when you have your own children, you start to think about what your childhood was like and what your experiences were like. And if they think back to their Lutheran school and their favorite teacher or whatever in their Lutheran school, and oh yeah, we prayed every day. That was really important. Oh, and we kneeled at the kneelers, and we, you know, like all of those process, they start to remember what their schooling was like and how fond they were of their schooling. And again, you know, this isn't going to happen with everybody. They might find themselves coming back. They might find themselves coming back to their roots. Now, maybe they don't go to a Lutheran church, maybe they don't go to a Lutheran school, but maybe they become Christian. Maybe they, you know, obviously we want them to become Lutheran, but if they become Christian, how amazing is that, even if they come back to the Christian faith? So that's what I was kind of thinking about too, is the broader, the larger, the philosophical implications of what we actually are inculcating and what we are helping our students to realize. Is it becomes a part of who they are. It becomes a part of their being when they went to school.
30 years ago, I had a couple come to catechesis, adult catechesis. They had 3 children. I think the youngest was in our school, and they came from a completely Neo-Pentecostal background. They had been members of the same Neo-Pentecostal church for, 15 or 20 years before they show up at ours. So of course, I'm curious. Why are people defecting from Neo-Pentecostalism and ending up in liturgical dead Orthodox Lutherans, right? And they said, this is so instructive, we realized that disordered worship results in disordered lives, morally and otherwise. We are despairing of our children because they've seen too much disorder in worship. We want them to be someplace where the Word of God is delivered in an orderly way to create orderly and beautiful lives. And that's what you're doing in your classroom.
Yeah. The one thing, I've been doing the colloquy, because I'm not colloquized yet, but I've been doing colloquy, and one wonderful thing that I've learned from colloquy, I didn't realize this, was in order for your, oh gosh, what is it now? Sorry, now I'm blanking. In the 1800s, in order for your church, I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking. I think in order for your church to become a part of the LCMS, or in order for a school, can't remember exactly which one it is, but in order for your school to become a part of the LCMS, you had to have a church connected with the school. So the church.
What was it? It was the opposite.
Sorry.
The other way around. In order to be a church, you had to have
school. There we go. That's what it was. So back in the day, right? And again, we don't want to be nostalgic, right? We don't want to be nostalgic for like because but one thing in the old days, one thing in the old days that I had forgotten, was in order to become a Lutheran church, a part of the LCMS, you had to have a school. So you had to start a school in order to join the LCMS, and this was probably in the earlier times in the 1800s when the church was just starting. And so schools are really just as important as the church. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of you could contest that, but the school should be incongruent with the church. Like it should be acting together as one, for sure. So and then the school should also be supporting the church. So by doing that, right, you're taking those liturgies and you're putting them into your school practice, into your everyday. Yes.
What do you think about that? It's putting a high priority on education of your children, and it's solid Lutheran and confessional, and it's something great to look back on.
But you're also preparing them to be in the world as well. Now remember that, because they're going to go into the world, and if we prepare them for the world, and I mean not just, we teach them the Lutheran theology and we, nail that into their heads. Not just that. I mean, that's why they're studying the pagans, because guess what? The pagans, it's just like in the plenary, the pagans are from thousands of years ago are no different from the pagans today, right? That this is why we actually study the pagans, is because where did they get their false beliefs? Well, that's a lot of where people today get a lot of their false beliefs as well, right? We're out of time. Okay. Sorry guys, we are out of time. But thank you so much, and good luck on the new school year.